Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday night. Yeah, glad to have you all here with us. And tonight we have Selina here with us in the house. First off, let me just say thank you for coming and being a part of Wednesday night. Yay! As we regroup and get back together. Also, just to remind you of some of the things we have coming up, our beloved Amy will be here in concert on the 21st of March. Yes, she will. She will be here. And shoes. I need more shoes. I have 28 bags. We have 28 bags. We need 100 bags before the end of this month. So let's get busy. There may be a little shoe drive. And while I take care of a little bit of this reverb that's happening, let me introduce to you the lady of the hour, the one and only. And tonight we are talking about sitting in receivership with Selina Maitreya.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Gino. Thank you. Lovely to be here. I'm excited about our evening ahead and our discussion on receivership, and happy to share ideas on how you can place yourself there. One of the things that's often asked of me is, what is receivership? What does it actually mean? And for me, sitting in divine receivership is the experience of consistently connecting with the divine light within us. And we all have that opportunity, but it's not something that we're ever taught how to do. And so full receivership is that experience of tapping into the intuitive body. And what I love to share as we begin, is to really kind of go over all of the aspects of who we really are. Because when we think of ourselves, we think of ourselves as one-dimensional, and we refer to ourselves as me or I, right? Yeah. But we are actually many, many dimensions. So we are the physicality of the body. We have a physical brain. We have our personality, our emotional body. We have our ability, our intellectual body. And then we have vibration. Mm-hmm. And the vibration that's within us is the vibration of low frequency of the ego, the fear that we carry from our past experiences of pain. And we have the high frequency of the divine within us. And so when we're in full receivership, we're not in our thinking mind. We're not in our emotional body. We are not certainly in the energy of fear. We're actually in the energy of the divine within us. It's fully activated within us. So sitting in full receivership is coming to a place in our daily life, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about going to meditation or prayer, which is when we are also usually in full receivership. But we're talking about full receivership in our daily life, Gina.
That's really awesome. Thinking about the thought of receivership and how it affects me in my world, things happen very quickly. Mm-hmm. So to start to practice or train yourself to be able to observe these moments when you're in receivership. So I had an instant, I love, the angels play with me with numbers. And I see 222, I've been seeing that quite a bit, 444, 333, very, very present. And the other day, I'd said out loud, when I hear something, I'm going to act on it. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to have a second thought about it. I'm going to do it. And so I was at the store, and I heard, go to this particular house. This is about shoes. I'm collecting shoes. And I parked in the red. And there was a couple sitting on their porch, and she said, "Baby, you gonna get a ticket. They will ticket quickly." I said, "I'm just going to see if they left these shoes for me on this gate." So I go over there and I see that there's a bag of shoes. I'm like, okay. And when I come back, she said, "Oh, I had prepared these shoes for you." So I looked at her and I said, "Then I guess I parked in the right spot." To me, that was being in complete receivership, that I heard quickly, "Park right here." I didn't, because she didn't have her shoes out, which is the request, to leave them out in the, that's the request. But I would have hesitated before. I would have drove around, tried to find a parking space, all of that. And I was like, wow, I listened, and it happened so quickly, bing, bada boom, bada bing.
And not only did you listen to the divine, which was what was speaking to you, the aspect of you, but it seems as if I listened to you carefully enough, that you were looking to pick up shoes somewhere else, but when
Yes.
you told her you were just there to pick up shoes, she said, "Oh, I've got some for you." So you had extra shoes to pick up. So that happened as well.
Well, it was kind of extra. I had given flyers to everybody in that neighborhood.
So she was aware. So
she was aware. That's why I said she didn't leave them out. I didn't know, though. They were sitting out there, so I didn't know that they had shoes.
Yeah.
Because after I leave the flyer, a couple of days before, I don't want to bother people. So just with that, the whole thing of receivership is very exciting. With the little things before, that wouldn't have been enough for me to recognize that you actually listened to Source, you did something, and the outcome was really easy and effortlessly, and it was fun, and it was really beautiful. And so how do I've just gotten myself sick and tired of not listening. That's my practice now. I'm sick and tired of not listening. But how do you get into a practice of listening?
And it is a practice. It is very much a practice, and it's not one that we are trained to do by our schools, by our parents, not even sometimes, in any studies that we do of spirituality. One of the areas that we need to look at when we think of how do we become present is this practice of what's called witnessing as you be, which is a practice that nobody can do for you, that you do for yourself, where you train yourself to literally understand that you have all these bodies. That you're not a one-dimensional being, because if you think you're one-dimensional, then you either are or you're not. But when you understand that you're moving parts, that your brain comes in and out, that you put your attention, it's where your consciousness is at any point. Where is your attention, your consciousness? Is your attention on your brain, on your thinking? Is your attention on your emotional body? When you witness as you be, you're open to noticing where your consciousness is. And so watching yourself as you move through the day, you begin to notice where your consciousness is. And a beautiful practice that I can share so easily is one where you look at your phone at the beginning of the day for your calendar, and you put in 3 times a day where you have a few moments of in between appointments. Maybe you're getting in the car at that point, but you notice where you have a few moments during the day, and you actually put in an alert at that point to stop. And you set it at the beginning of the day, and I guarantee you when the alert goes off in the late morning or early afternoon, the first thing that's going to happen is, what's that about, right? You're going to forget, because we forget so easily. And then you'll remember, oh, this is my check-in. So the way we start to witness as we be is to set check-ins on the phone, and when the alert goes off, you just simply scan your being. Where are my thoughts right now? Am I calm? Is my brain racing? Where's my emotional body? Am I at peace or am I stressed? Where is my spiritual self? Where is my connection to the divine? Am I sitting in essence? Am I feeling connected to the divine? Or am I so much in my brain, because maybe I'm at work or maybe I'm driving, that I'm not feeling connected to Source? So this check-in is what gets us started, because we're creatures of habit. And if we do this 2 or 3 times a day, 2 weeks, we start to create neural pathways in the brain. We create essence. We create opportunities for us to actually check in and notice. And over time of a couple of weeks of doing this, we start the habit of watching as we, and being able to witness as we be. So that's one of the first practices we can take on. Some of the shifts we can take, Gino, to enable us to be in an energetic frequency where we can be connected to the divine. And one of them is something that most people think they're not capable of or they're not willing to do, which is to stop multitasking. Because we need to be in presence in order to be able to connect to the divine and be in divine receivership. And when we're multitasking, we're driving, we're texting, we're cooking, and we're reading off the computer, and then we're taking phone calls, and then we're giving direction at home. This multitasking is such a daily habit for so many of us. I know I loved to multitask, right? Right? You are a doer. You do so much. And so did I. And it was part of my daily life. And it was something that was important to me. And way back when I was a multitasker, I accomplished an awful lot. But I was rarely present. And being present is so critical because there's no way we can experience the divine if our mind is racing, if our body's racing. Because for most people, especially in the beginning, a relationship with the divine is so, it's intangible. For you to be able to say, wow, I'm just going to start listening. And I heard, when I chose to listen, I heard. Most people would confuse the voice of the divine that you heard, that came from the divine within you, as a thought. Because we're so trained to think that everything we hear internally is a thought, which comes from the brain, which is generally directed from the low frequency. Even a great thought normally comes from the ego, which is not always a bad thing. But when we sense, when we intuit, that's divine direction. And being able initially, especially, to determine and to distinguish a divine command, as you did, from a thought or from a fear, and the energy of fear, is something we have to cultivate. And in the third dimensional world, we practice. If I want to build my biceps, I practice with free weights. Well, the consciousness is a muscle. And when we choose to have consciousness be our directing tool rather than the brain or the fear, then we have to practice.
Well, I will say to that, because I do understand about the practice, because the listening has been, this has been a journey, because I've heard, this, and then I've heard something else. And at one point I got frustrated, like, which is it? Mm-hmm. Which is the voice? Mm-hmm. And I will say for myself, there's this, there's a practice that I'm starting to participate in, and just simply saying to myself that I am connected to the divine, and I can hear you. That was big for me, that to realize, like, I really can hear you. Mm-hmm. Because before there was the question, am I hearing you? Mm-hmm. Or is this just me talking to myself?
Well, that's such a great question, and so many people have that. So let me share with you. I love your practice, first of all. When you say that, yes, you are choosing to activate the divine within. The divine is always an aspect of us, but we were given free will when we came into the body. And free will is very easily defined as choosing to say yes to the divine or not. So when you make that command, when you say that declaration that you are ready to receive, that you are the divine, then you are activating that within you. And that is why you are hearing that particular piece of information. So one of the ways that we can determine, is it the divine speaking to me or is it the ego? The ego is always going to land in us, and we're going to be using words like should've, could've, would've, and the divine is always a completely open state. There are words that are accepting, and they're warm, and they're loving. They're never coulda, woulda, shoulda words. They're never derogatory. They're never, oh my God, look at what I did. The divine is always uplifting. It is always warm and embracing, because that's the quality of the divine. So when you're hearing words that are coulda, woulda, shoulda, I made up a new word, coulda, woulda, shoulda, then those are words of the ego. When you hear words of judgment that are coming through, those are words from the ego. But words that are open, that are expansive, that's when the divine is coming through. The directional words that you heard, park over here. I remember in 2012, I used to cook dinner every night for my boys. I loved to cook, and as busy as I was, it didn't matter, I always cooked. And one night, I was literally moving in the process of cooking a recipe from the counter to the refrigerator, and I came in a complete knowing, it's time to sell your house. Now, I hadn't been thinking at all in that moment, nor had I been discussing in the days prior selling my house. Yeah. But I had made a commitment 11 years before, when I got divorced, to keep my kids in the house. And I would keep them. I made a commitment to myself and the divine that I was going to work as hard as I could to keep my boys in their home while we got divorced, so they could have a semblance of normality. They could have their friends, their neighborhood. And I knew that when my kids got older and graduated from high school, I would be selling my home. But I wasn't thinking about it. So it's time to sell your house. A direction that when it lands, you know it. It's full, it's complete, and internally there is an inner knowing that you know this was not a thought. This was a direction from the divine.
I love that. And I will say for me that there's two things that's rumbling right now. But one is that I've noticed that I call them G-babies, my G-babies, it's just like a whisper. It was park here. Had it been me, it would have been parked there. You should really park there. Why don't you park right there? Now you've passed it. You've passed it now when you should have parked there. So what I've noticed is that, it's a constant voice when it's not my G-babies.
But it's also a judgmental. If you could listen to your voice when you talked, because the park there, right, was very gentle, was very open, and the voice that was not you should have gone there. I mean, that's the judgment. And so it's the vibration as well. You can tune into the vibration, and you know the vibration of the divine is gentle and loving. Never anything but. It's clear, it's complete, and it's usually gentle and loving. And what comes through the brain or comes through the fear, especially the fear that then is picked up by the brain, is not. It's much more judgmental, and it's harsher. So you gave us a beautiful example.
Well, that's the ongoing practice.
Yes.
Is like, oh, was that a whisper, or was that or was that me going over and over again? The other thing that is up, the ego. Mm-hmm. There's always, to me, a lot of negative association with the ego. But I'm like, it's a part of me.
Absolutely.
So it can't be this negative thing. So I guess my question to you is, one, where do you stand with the ego? Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the ego is this space that it's this negative little ninny in the corner disrupting your life? Or is the ego, it's a part of you? Does it need to be trained like anything else? Can you train the ego to be more in alignment with where you're living?
Absolutely love the question. I am not a teacher who will say, we got to lose the ego. I think once again, when we look at who we are, we're this physical being. We have all these parts to us, and one of the frequencies is the ego. And it is represented in my book and in my understanding as lower frequency. But that is when it's engaged as being the judge and jury. I believe, in my experience, the purpose and what the divine has told me is the purpose of the ego is twofold. It's fight, flight. It is what you want to hear. It's what you want to have. If it's what you want engaged if you're about to touch your stove. It's what you want engaged within you if your foot is leaving the curb and you're in a busy city, and you haven't looked left or right. So it's there to stop us when we need it. It's also there as an opportunity for us to check ourselves, to look at and see when we are in a place that's not in alignment with the divine. So the ego has a purpose, but what happens is the way we've been conditioned through our families, through society, in schools, is we've not been educated as to the purpose of the ego. And because we're in a society that lives so much from fear, because the ego is indeed the expression of fear, the ego is out of alignment. So we believe we are our thoughts, we are our emotions, and we are our fear, which is the ego. So to answer your question, yes, ego is important in its place. And do we have to restructure its position in our life stream? Absolutely. But we don't do it by saying no to the ego. We do it by saying yes to love. So when we say yes to love, because, we live in the third dimension. And in the third dimension, you can't go upstairs and down at the same time. We can't be sick and well, and we can't be in fear and love. So to try to say to someone, stop thinking about the word elephant, all they're going to do is focus on that word. So in this work that we do and making our life our practice through engaging in the energy of love, whenever we want to make a shift, like reordering the priority of the ego in the ecosystem of our being, we don't try to stop the ego, we turn to love. Because as soon as we engage the energy of love as a response to difficulty, there's no room for the ego. So in 1 minute, you could be in a state of fear, but if you have your awareness and you've used the practices, you know then that that's the moment that in that moment of fear, you use a transformational practice to literally change the energy within your life stream, and you're changing it to the energy of love. And as soon as you engage in one of the processes that I share, then you're in the energy of love, and the ego has no space.
I love that. And I also always think about the value, because in order for someone to make a change in their life, they have to feel that it has some value, some value for them, some long-term, I got the brass ring type of feeling. And so I will say for me that the journey of really understanding, I know a lot of us, we go to church and we say God is all there is, and in the next moment, the conversation is so not that God is all there is. So what is the value that we can attach to this? I've done my phone where I would pick random times for my alarm to go off. And it meant for me to have 2 minutes or 3 minutes of silence. And it was really great. And I wonder, why did you stop, Gino? I did it for like 3 months. And I loved it. But then I stopped at some point. So it brings me back to, did I not get enough value? Is that why I stopped? Because at some point, I felt I saw things changing, but maybe not enough, because after 3 months, I stopped. So how do we attach? Is that clear, that question, the value?
The question is clear, but I don't think it's the value aspect of it as much as it's everyone comes to the place where they're ready to move from attending wonderful community events, as you do here at the center, that to reading books on enlightenment, to going to workshops. Becoming spiritually mature happens after we do a lot of community events. We read books, we go to workshops, but then there's something within us that still wants to be and wants to walk through the world in the values that we hold. And I don't think that there's any one thing that I can tell anybody, or you can tell anybody, or any other teacher can tell you, this is what you have to do, and it will take you to that place. I think it's a very individual journey that people come to, where some people will and some people won't. It's perhaps not their journey if they don't. But what we're talking about is living your values versus reading about them in a book or believing them to be true, which is important, but not necessarily having the energy of the divine integrated within you, having enough opportunity for you to have the divine integrated within you, for you to have more of the light than you do of the pain. Because we all start this process, we all come to spirituality having a lot of pain inside of us in the third dimensional world. Very few people come to spirituality already enlightened. I mean, if we're enlightened, we're off the planet most of the time. So we come here, there's a lot of pain. And we want to learn how not to respond to life from pain. And that pain looks like many different, shows up in many different ways. So I think it's actually an individual process where yes, the value, but people have just come to a place where it's not enough anymore to just read about spirituality. I really need to be it.
I agree 100%. I mean, that was kind of a trick question. You did good there.
I can leave now. My work is complete. Gino has said I'm good.
Because, I mean, just over time, looking at my journey, just over time, there are key points that I just was like, all right, enough. Yeah. Enough, Gino. Enough is enough. And I agree, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey is different. And so you look out right now at the world with everything that's happening. And, being in receivership for some people right now is just something that they can't even begin to put their minds around. So when we take this into a literal everyday experience, I'll just briefly, I had unplugged completely from everything. I wasn't a news person before the election, and my mother used to tell me, you're going to be ignorant. You're not going to know anything. And I was like, Mama, you'll tell me. I'll be fine. So for years, I stopped watching the news. I was very happy. My cousin, his thing was, I watch the news to see how I can help. And I thought, wow, that's great. I'm not there. So when the election came up, I got very invested and I was in. And being heartbroken and just in amazement, I was like, okay, I'm out. So I unplugged from all the news. I unplugged from everything. And then about 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine pulled my coat chain to come to a protest and around democracy. And I realized that, okay, I can't be totally out. I have to find a balance. And so this balance has been, for me, balancing my spirituality, being able to watch something that I feel is so outrageously ridiculous, but at some point understanding, and this is my own personal belief, that it's a part of our journey here on this planet to expand into this next realm. And I have found myself going, okay, what is my part now? What is my part to do? And so one of the things dealing with racism, I've come to this understanding that the teaching of racism has really been, let's change the outside world to understand me, to understand people that are different, to understand disabilities, whatever that difference is. But I've come to this point now that that is not the way, that I have to change, because part of my thinking sees me as a black woman, then as a child of God, and then all the other little da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, wow, if I can't see myself as a child of God first, then I can't expect the world to see me differently. And so with that, that is my quest right now. For me, that's a receivership for me to step into. But the gentleness of it is that I'm not ignoring that there is a racist problem, that we have this problem. But I do want to start to share with people that we must change how we see ourselves in order for the world to see us differently. And not, let me take that back, not for the world. I realize I have to see myself differently in order to be at peace with who I am.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. That was stunningly, stunningly an incredible insight for you that you've just shared with everybody, because it's so true. You know, when I look at my grace list is this horizontal line of who's important to me. And I'm at the front of that grace list. And I'm at the front of that grace list because I came into this life stream to take care of this life stream. Right behind me is the divine. And the divine is part of me. The divine is within me, but that meaning that the divine is my relationship with the divine is the most important relationship I have in the world. Because in this lifetime, because if I see myself aligned with the divine, if I give myself opportunities, and I, as a third dimensional world being, I create opportunities to walk in the world as the divine, then everything that I touch and everyone I speak to and every experience I have is of the divine. And then behind that are my sons and my family on my grace list. So what you were saying about how you see yourself as a woman of God or a woman of the divine is really important, because that energy of the divine then you will seek to activate 24/7 within you. And when we seek to activate that, it becomes who we are because of the act of free will that we've been given. If we don't choose to be in that energy, that's a choice, that's free will, but then we're not going to be experiencing that, and it's not going to be received by others. What you said about balance, I'd love to address a little bit. On Sunday, the conversation that the teaching that I shared around the conversation I had with the divine, where the divine specifically gave me information to take here to share with everyone, was all about what you just shared. It was all about the fact that we are being asked in this time of extreme division on this planet, which is showing up a lot in this country because that's where we are, but it's all over the world. We're being asked at this time to find out what is our work, and you were just talking about that. Everyone has work to do, and there's lots of types of work that they spoke of being from one of two places. You've either got your feet on the ground, and your work is to, in the third dimensional world, speak truth to power, to march, to write letters, to donate, or your work is to be up a light on the hill. Now, there are times, and you just said this, where you would like to have your feet on the ground, and there's times where you feel within you that it's important for you to come out, to have your energy not be influenced, if you will, from all of the energy of the third dimensional world, and you want to be at the light on the hill. And that's important. So it's not as if we always have to be have our boots on the ground or always be up as a light on the hill unless we choose to. I choose to. I choose to not have my boots on the ground. I choose to be a light on the hill because that's where my energy is able to be more easily connected to the divine, and I choose that easy path. I've done a great deal of work to connect to the divine, and that's where I'm home. So that's where I want to be. But if you want to be back and forth, that's wonderful. That means you need to be aware. Where is Gino at? And comes down to that sitting in receivership. Sit in receivership of the knowing that now I need to take myself out of the third dimensional world. I need to go up be a light on the hill because I know that my vibration needs to be as pure as it can be so I can beam out. And then when you want to be back in the third dimensional world, you do so. So we have choice. And the whole idea that the divine would always want is for us to be conscious of where we are and to make the choice that we believe in our heart is the right one for us.
I love that. And the dance of the balance in having conversation with friends around racism and but also with my family, that literally when I said to them, we've been taught to believe that we're less than. Nobody wants to say it, but it's been a practice that sometimes out of safety, sometimes out of the necessity to be able to maneuver. But it is this time now, and one of my friends said, so are you saying that racism doesn't exist, that slavery didn't happen? I was like, absolutely not.
Right. They can both things can coexist
They
at the
can.
same time.
They can. And that's part of, I will say, my fear of taking this out to a larger realm is that I don't want to be confused with someone that's saying that this isn't real, it didn't happen. That's not what I'm saying. My message is that we, as people that the world has said is different, we must see ourselves differently and not expect the world to see us differently or wait for the world to change. I have to be that change. And part of that is I do have to be able to connect with God, because at times things that are said to me are not pleasant. And I don't want to have a reaction, but sometimes I do have a reaction. And I also realize that, that's part of it as well too, because that's a knock. That's a
reminder.
Yeah.
A reminder.
There's you've got some stuff still going on in there that you must heal. So I didn't want to take us this way, but it just came through.
No, this is a perfect way to take us.
So this space of being in receivership to carry this message, to start to get out, to have conversations with people, to be able to have an earnest conversation, and to speak to people that it affects mostly. I was talking to a friend of mine that she was like, well, Gino, as an ally, I was like, as an ally, you see us too different. You see, I must help them. They need the help. And she's like, well, but you do. I said, but that's the whole cycle that we are in right now. And so with that, being able to unplug, to plug in, I'm going to ask you that, what are some safeguards, if you can, that I could do for myself or that others can do? If you're stepping out, this is uncomfortable ground for me, to want to be very public about it. And so is there a practice that I could lean on? I know meditation, there's some tools, but this is, when I think about this is in the moment, being able to respond from a space of love. when certain things may be said that I may not feel are loving. Go ahead.
I think the one thing I would share with you is to trust your truth. To trust your truth. And the truth is your relationship with the divine. The truth is knowing that you come from a place in this work that you want to do, that you want to take out to a larger audience or a larger community. To trust that you are being placed there by the divine. That, to give yourself grace, to give, which to me, grace, there has so many different definitions. I'm using it here as I've done my best. I didn't quite, if in other words, if you respond in a way that isn't loving, it's always great, as you said, you already are aware when that happens. You are already knowing that, okay, Gino, here's the opportunity to not do this in the future. So you have the awareness. So when you are responding not from love, the steps are to have that awareness, to rectify in the moment if you need to, and then to give yourself grace, which is defined as I've done my best, didn't quite make it today, I'm going to lay it at the foot of God, and I'm going to try again tomorrow. So the only safety net I know is to not need a safety net, is to trust that you are a woman that has been placed in a position where you're being asked by the divine to speak the truth to others. Because what you just shared here was so beautiful in regards to the understanding that what needs to change, whether people are marginalized, whether they are disrespected for thousands of years, whether they have been killed, whether they have been maimed, whether they have been put in a place for over and over and over, which has happened to people of color, which, there is an energetic residue that happens that is needed to be superseded. And the only energy I know that supersedes that is love, is the connection with the divine. So this beautiful message that you want to take to people, to be seen as an entity of the divine, and then to have all of the other labels, because it's third dimensional having labels, but being connected to the divine is not. So take that message out there and don't let any fear get in your way, because that's a place where the ego isn't functioning in a way that serves you best. And you're so beautiful and so articulate, and you are, and you have this passion. So it's so important to find the truth in all of that and to go out there and speak that truth, because it's needed more than ever. The balance is a verb. Balance is not a noun. It's not a place that we come to that's static. I remember Spirit sharing with me years ago, Gino, that look at a tightrope walker. A tightrope walker, when they're on the wire, they don't stand in the middle because they'd fall down. They're always going to the left. They're always going to the right. So this balance that maybe you're seeking is going to the left of love, and maybe you take a little couple of steps to the right in fear, but then you keep going back to love, and then the fear shows up, but you keep going back to love. That act, that verb, that balance is always changing until you finally come to a place where you don't even need the wire anymore. You're just fully grounded in love, and your feet are on the ground, and your body is completely of the divine. And then you can move forward. But before that happens, you're going to be going back and forth into the fear and into the love. That's what we experience as third dimensional beings, as physical forms that have the divine within us. So be patient with that, but be brave with that. You have a lot of bravery.
That, or just,
You do.
blind.
There's no or. There's no or. There's no or there. It's not an either or.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
So my question is being light on the hill versus the boots on the ground, especially in these times. I can very much see and feel that being the light on the hill is where I would like to be and where it's easiest for me. And yet I also take the history lesson of being a bystander and seeing what can happen with World War II and certain very powerful political figures changing millions of lives. And I know maybe that's coming from a place of fear, and so that's maybe the ego and the fear talking.
Well, maybe the idea is that what you've just said is a light on the hill is someone who is not engaged, and that's the misnomer here. That's the mistake, because I go to the light to be a light on the hill, not to remove myself, not to make it easy. It is not easy to be a light on the hill. What it means to be a light on the hill is that you are choosing to lead an integral life. You are choosing to lead a life where what's happening on the ground is not your action, but your action is to 24/7 be able to beam light. Light and frequency is a very real part of our life. So speaking truth to power is important. Those actions are important, but so is being the light on the hill so that you can shine the light on the people beneath you who are doing the marching. It's a hard job to do that marching and a hard job to speak truth to power, and everybody needs to be energetically boosted. So I think perhaps the mistake is that when you choose to be a light on the hill, you're really not doing anything, but you are. It is our conditioning that tells us the only way to speak truth to power is to have your boots on the ground. What we do as spiritual people is we understand the power of vibration. We understand the power of love. And when a being is on the light on the hill, sitting in the energy of love and living their life that way and really working to project out that energy constantly all around them, that is important work too, because other beings pick up that light and they're inspired by it and they're loved by it and they're soothed by it. And that is just as important, but we're conditioned to believe that only actions that happen in the physical world are important. I would agree that turning a blind eye to what's going on anywhere where there's any injustice is not an act of a high-frequency being. But the act of a high-frequency being can be to be engaged in the energy of love and to project it out as much as to have your boots on the ground.
Yeah, and thank you for that reminder.
Sure.
And I think being the light on the hill perhaps in community is even stronger and better because it magnifies.
It does, and I don't. And quite honestly, I don't think that there's any one way to do it, or one is better than the other, because we are energy in form. We're divine energy and we're low frequency energy. But let's look at the divine. We're the divine energy in a dense body. This is why I believe in Western medicine and I believe in Eastern healing traditions, because I'm not one or the other. I'm both, and so are all of us. And so it's never that the light on the hill is better or the boots on the ground. It's that all of that is needed. I mean, it's the same thing for, I would never want to do without the ego because it has purpose. There's a beautiful, teaching from Source, which is everything that can heal can harm, and everything that can harm can heal. So we live on a planet of paradox. Paradoxical forces actually hold our planet in place. We are paradox. We are high frequency energy in a dense form. Doesn't get more paradoxical than that. So for us to dismiss any aspect of our being, I don't believe serves us. To be respectful of, to welcome in, to choose which aspect of our being at any time we want to engage is always, I think, the choice to make, always knowing that we are the energy of the divine. That is a beautiful blessing that we have choice. Choice is one of our biggest freedoms.
Yes, it is. That was a great question. Thank you.
Really,
thank you.
excellent. Thank you.
And we'll start to wrap it up, but just also want to say that recognizing that the light on the hill, that energy really holds the boots on the ground to me. Because, and the world tells us that that's rose-colored glasses, that's pansy. But it is that energy that I think right now that the world is waking up to, that this frequency, this vibration, it's real and it's needed. And, like you said, I believe everybody's got their call of what is calling them to do. And all of this energy and light, that there have been many people that have turned a blind eye for so long that you cannot now. You can't turn a blind eye that there is a drastic change that's taking place around the world. And so the beauty of it is there is a big change that's unfolding. The messiness of it is that it's going to require us all in some form or capacity to step into. And I believe the ones that are leaving the planet right now realize, like, I can't deal, so I'm going to go on the other side. And I'm going to help and hold that light.
And I love that, and it's so true. I mean, the conversations I've had with the masters, the conversations I've had with spiritual leaders all over the country and all over the world in some cases, all from different modalities of spirit say the same thing. This is the new world order coming in. And this new way of being is about love. And so many different foundations have to come down. And we are living in a time of that destruction. We are living in a time of so many institutions and so many establishments that we knew to be real that are shifting and changing, but they're not happening gratuitously. It's not happening without a master energy plan that is overseeing this, and that would be the divine. I want to also speak so that we're living out right now our lives 24/7. We're in the destruction part of this, which is not an easy place to live. It is not but it's so important to keep the higher octave purpose. And there's a higher octave purpose for every piece of difficulty that happens in our life. Difficulty in the third dimensional world is a teacher. That's why I believe I was given a book to write that teaches us how to respond to difficulty from love. So what's happening right now in our world is the macrocosm of the microcosm of difficulty that we face every day. And so as we respond to all of this difficulty from love in different ways, which does not mean we accept what people are doing or we accept the destruction of what's happening, it means we understand it from a higher frequency and we speak up to these moments so that we can guide it with love. That's important, but keeping the higher octave purpose in mind is helpful too. Also, Gino, when you were speaking about the change makers of the world, I mean, I think of Martin Luther King. He was not only a change maker with his boots on the ground, he was a light on the hill. He was a man of spirit. He was a man of the divine who brought his most memorable speeches that moved people the most, came about from speaking from the divine channeling through him. I mean, you can't listen to his words and his speeches and not be touched in your heart. We are all a part of the net of oneness. You know, we have different bodies, we have different experiences, different personalities. Everything about us in each and every person is different except for the energy of love, the network of love. And when he activated that within him as he spoke to that part in everybody, but he also had his boots on the ground. So that energy of the divine is in every single great leader. And they speak through that energy as they keep their feet on the ground.
That is beautifully, beautifully said. We are coming close to ending our time together. This has been an awesome, awesome conversation. And just want to remind everyone that Selina will be here Friday actually reading her book. I've read a little bit of it, not as much as I should have, but it's really fantastic, and I hope you come out and see her and participate and get a real great understanding of this powerhouse that we're so blessed to have with us. So I'm going to let you end the night with whatever you would like to end with. I'm going to leave you on stage. I'm going to go over to that booth, and once you end, I will close us out. And remember, you virtually, I'll put our QR codes up there. So we love the ding, 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 ding that you do so beautifully well, as your blessings bless us and it blesses others. So with that being said, I want to thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
I want to thank you for being here tonight. And I want to thank you for whenever you're here. And this conversation is one to continue on. It's one to open up. And this is part of the thing that I believe as a community, we must have these conversations to remind ourselves to open our hearts up and to be vulnerable with one another, to say what you may not think needs to be said or wants to be said in public, but this is the only way that we can drop the secrets and move into a greater space of love. So that's me. Thank you.
What I'd love to leave you with tonight is the understanding that you are a multidimensional being. And one of the most important aspects of that multidimensionality of who you are is your connection to the divine energy within you, which is always yours to activate. You were given the gift of free will, the gift to say yes or no to the divine. And when you find yourself at a juncture in your life where you believe it's time to not just read the books, not just go to the workshops, not just come to gatherings, but you'd like to live your life in integrity with the divine, that's the time to start to find the connection with the divine as your daily guidance. So know that it doesn't matter when that happens, whenever you choose to reach in and connect with the divine, that's the time to do so. It will always be there for you. And there is no one that can make that choice but you. And in these times of great division, a relationship with the divine is the most beneficial, the kindest, and the most loving relationship you can have. And that relationship is built in trust and grows faith. It is faith. And that relationship is what makes your life become your practice. So I want to thank Gino and the center here for having me here. And I'd wish you a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, everyone, Amy's coming in town March 21st. You don't want to miss that. Third Saturday with the Angels will be coming up. Also, there is a sign up for the animated laughter if that costs you a workshop. And, of course, you cannot forget shoes, 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 and more shoes is what we need. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you here on Friday with Selina and sharing your love and light.